Welcome to episode 14 of the Composer Happy Hour. This is our final episode of season 1, and we hope you've been enjoying the show. Our guest today is Amy Gordon. One of the many things that I admire about Amy is that she hustles. She is a strong self-advocate, something many of us in the arts struggle with. Like everyone in the music industry, her career was impacted by COVID, but Amy was quick to pivot and to look for new and unique opportunities for her music to be performed. There's a quiet tenaciousness about her. She also writes some really lovely music. On today's episode, we discuss California winters, cats on Instagram, and we play a game of this or that. If you don't have one already, pour yourself a drink. You deserve it. My name's Brad Pearson. My guest today is Amy Gordon, and this is the Composer Happy Hour. Amy, welcome to the Composer Happy Hour. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Happy to be finally taking a break and getting a drink today.
Yes. It feels strange to be not working.
Yeah. I was sitting actually at a coffee shop earlier today getting a little bit of work done, and they're getting ready to also be a coffee shop / brewery, but they're not yet serving the beer. And so the owner asked me, he's like, "Hey, how are you? How are things?" I said, "Oh, good. I would rather be ordering a beer right now than a coffee, but things are good." So here we are, and we've got drinks. Why don't you tell us what you're drinking tonight?
Sure. Well, they do actually have really good coffee porter. That's
Yeah.
really delicious beer and coffee.
Yeah.
Both. So I am drinking. My mom actually found she and my dad were raving about this, so she sent me this recipe for a Bacardi spiced cider punch, which I figured would be good. It's kind of Thanksgiving, Christmas, holiday season. So let me be very careful because I'm over my computer equipment. So
yeah, sure. Oh, nice.
Fancy glasses, at
yeah.
Home Goods, but are we talking recipes yet? Or
yeah, sure. Tell us what's in it.
So I use my cocktail shaker for the first time. That's very exciting. It has Bacardi spiced rum, apple cider orange juice, a dash of maple syrup, and ice. And I put some maraschino cherries in it.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds like a nice holiday drink. We're recording, of course, before the holidays. We're a little over, or maybe a week from Thanksgiving. Almost a week from Thanksgiving. And then this will come out closer to Christmas. But yeah, that's a nice holiday drink. I dig it.
Spiced rum is good for cold-ish LA. Los Angeles nights, it was just 90 over the weekend, but we'll pretend like it's, snowing.
Yeah. Well, for a lot of people that are listening or will be listening to this in almost a month, it will be cold where they are. Maybe not so much in LA, but cold elsewhere. So, well, cool. I'm going kind of simple tonight. I've got High West double rye whiskey. So it's a blended rye whiskey, and really nice. And I'm just drinking that straight by itself, and keeping things super, super, super simple tonight.
So, I'm glad you have a glass. I thought just for a second,
just out of the bottle,
straight out of the bottle. That kind of week.
Yep. I mean, it is that kind of week, but no, I do have a glass. So, all right. Well, let's say cheers.
Let me be very careful not to spill this over my equipment. All right. Cheers.
Cheers. There you go.
We have kind of matching glasses.
It's funny. I was at a bar just last weekend, and they actually had the exact same glasses that I have at home, which was kind of cool, although not unexpected. These are from the Libby Glass Factory, which is in Toledo. And so it made sense that we were out at a bar and they had the same glasses. So the cocktail's good?
It actually is delicious. So thanks, Mom and Dad.
There you go.
Excellent. I think that will be our cocktail of choice for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so. And you've broken in your cocktail shaker. So
I've actually
ready to go.
Had it for the entire pandemic, but haven't really been using it very much. So I think I got it right before the pandemic, and then
yeah. And so what did you because we've talked with a few different people about our kind of pandemic hobbies. I've mentioned a couple times that I started baking sourdough, although it was way into the pandemic, but it was, something that so many people were doing. And that was a lot of fun. One of your, I think, former colleagues in LA, Matt Hazard, was talking about that he had really gotten into craft cocktails over the
Oh yeah,
quarantine,
I'm
and
sure
so
he makes a mean cocktail.
yeah, so he used his shaker on the air, which took a little more effort, I think, than he was anticipating. But
Yeah.
it went over well. So, what has there been anything? Did you, when you were going through the last year, did you take on any new hobbies to kind of pass the time at home?
I did. And I'm very, very bad at having hobbies just be hobbies. They kind of turn into like side gigs or like, I get so into them. So yes, me and my now husband, we have two black cats, Bo and Crowley, and we think they're like adorable. They're really funny. They were two rescues. Bo has like a fluffy tail, Crowley has like a straight tail, and they're just. I mean, everyone who has cats, they know that they're just nuts. But my pandemic hobby was growing a cat Instagram channel. So
Okay.
we are now up to about 5,500 followers.
Okay.
Um, so our plan is we just follow a bunch of black cats. They follow us back. And so our entire feed is just black cats. And we just, comment on each other's photos as if we're the cats. And so we've been posting lots of cat pandemic photos. And so my husband is kind of like the photographer and he just gets some great goofy shots of them. And that's when I feel stressed, I would just go to my cat feed, and
Mhm.
that was one of my hobbies. Another one of my hobbies is escape rooms. I've gotten
Okay.
really into it. I've always been obsessed with like Myst and escape rooms, but I did some virtual ones with some friends where they actually had someone in a room like in Spain or something, and they would actually like film the room, and you could tell
Mm.
them what to do and like solve the puzzle through the person operating it. It was really fun, and
Cool.
some board games, and so those have been things that have been fun.
Now I have several follow-ups.
Yes.
uh, so I'll be honest with you. The cat channel is not my thing. I do not cats, not my friends. Mostly because I think they're murder machines. Basically, I think if cats were big, they would just murder everyone, and that terrifies me. And I don't trust them.
Yeah, they might hear them whining
Yeah.
on the door.
But you mentioned escape rooms. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but did I think I saw you were working on some kind of music related escape rooms. Was that a thing that happened?
Yes. So again, like I'm very bad at like keeping my hobbies. It kind of
Yeah.
turns into like projects. So I was seeing a lot of you're on like I'm a choir director
Oh
Facebook.
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
seeing like so many posts of what do I do on Zoom? Like we've done so much digital things already. I don't know what to do that's like fun. And I had been playing escape rooms for a really long time. And I thought, well, why don't I just try making a few like PDF based escape, just like little puzzles that you can either do in Zoom, like over. You could, have students play virtually. You could print it out and send it home. A lot of teachers were
Hmm.
doing kind of like packets to send home to students who maybe didn't feel comfortable coming in, or if it was quarantine day, then you could send these packets home. So something that was pretty flexible, and if you had some students hybrid and some online, you could even pair them and in live and breakout rooms. And so I decided to just do some music theory. I designed an easy game and then an intermediate game, and it was really fun doing some kind of off the maybe like off the beaten path puzzles, and it was
Yeah.
completely original. And I had a really good friend of mine, Ari Stoltz, do the art. Did an incredible job. She's also a soprano, and yeah, sell it on my website. So it was really fun.
Okay, so people can find those on your website still.
They can, yes.
Super cool. Well, we glossed over kind of maybe the most important part. You got married recently. I think, was it in April of this year?
It was in October of
October.
last year.
Oh, but it was recent.
I think it took us 6 months to finally change our Facebook status from
Maybe
engaged
that's what
to
I saw.
married.
Maybe I saw
Yes,
a recent
finally
Facebook
changed
change.
it in April, I think. Good
Got it.
memory.
That makes sense. Well, how's that going?
It's going great. It's going great. We just actually bought a townhome, very close to his family, and it's been really nice. So we moved in like July, so it's been a pretty busy year.
Yeah.
We were supposed to get married, in a big venue, and we, signed the venue contract in January 2020, and you know how that went. So we kind of had to regroup, and we ended up getting married in my parents' backyard, actually my childhood home, and it was beautiful, and it was very meaningful. So
Yeah.
I'm actually very thankful that we ended up having a really, really powerful, even in the midst of everything, we still managed to make it.
Yeah. That's really nice. I think the whole pandemic and quarantine, there were obviously so many missed opportunities, right? Especially for musicians. It was really, really hard. And people planning things like weddings, or we had a baby in
Congratulations.
May,
You mentioned
2 months
toddler.
after 2 months after the quarantine. And boy, did that change a lot of our plans and ideas about what that was going to look like. But I think similar to you talking about how the wedding turned out really nice, and you were, thankful because it became maybe more meaningful than it would have been otherwise. Even same, right? Having just really isolated time with the family, just my wife and my son and me at home, turned into a really wonderful thing that I probably would not have gotten the same way had things been like they had been in 2019. So it turned out pretty well, I guess. So I'm glad to hear that the wedding went well.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations on your toddler.
Oh yeah, thanks. I feel bad because he gets brought up on every episode, but that's just kind of how it happens. He's occupies my whole world now, so it's what it is.
Really, I,
Yeah,
I I don't know how that escaped my Facebook
yeah,
gaze, but that's really exciting.
yeah.
What's his name?
His name's Prescott.
Prescott.
Yeah, yeah, we like it.
Nice.
Prescott Pearson. My wife always says it's a sharp name. That's she.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we like it. Well, tell me. I want to kind of go back to the beginning. I want to get to the roots of Amy Gordon. Tell us when and where you were born.
Okay. I was born in October 1986 in Los Angeles, in kind of like the Valley.
Hmm?
And yeah, I mean, going back to my childhood home, I've lived in that same house my parents have lived there for 37 years, I think. So
Awesome.
yeah,
And what are your parents' names?
Deborah and Steve.
And what did Deborah and Steve do when you were growing up, or what do they do now?
Well, both of them. Well, my dad was actually a classical guitarist, and so he really raised me with a love. Both of them really encouraged my love of music, but he was really influential in kind of my love of music theory. We both really shared like a love of. He really got me loving like romantic impressionist music. Debussy. Really got a chance to like appreciate that at a much younger age, and he and my mom actually both were computer programmers, and she was a biology major. She was actually working in biology, and then she switched to computer programming as well. So they
Cool.
started off in different careers but ended up doing the same job.
Yeah. And so obviously, as a classical guitarist, was that something he was doing as a career before transitioning, or was it something that he just really had a passion for?
Well, he majored in music at
Yeah.
CSUN, and he was a full-time musician. But I think when they decided to settle down, and I think he wanted something a little bit more where the hours weren't so insane.
Mhm.
Playing at weddings and musical theater pits. Like you don't get home until like 2. So I think they just wanted something a little bit more stable. Although, they're both retired now, he's really getting back into playing, which is really wonderful to hear. And my mom is a huge music. She loves music, and she's at they're both at every one of my concerts. And I just, I'm sure they'll be listening. So hi, Mom and Dad. Thank you for all your support. So yeah, I was growing up I was raised in a house that really appreciated music and encouraged it.
Mm-hmm. And so what was the soundtrack like? Do you remember growing up? Like when you were real young, you said your dad introduced you to a lot of classical music. Was that stuff that was playing in the house? Was it playing in the car when you were driving around? Were they listening to, pop music? And what are the things that you remember from growing up?
Sure. Yeah. So my dad was really obsessed with the Swingle Singers.
Mm-hmm.
By Ward Swingle, really kind of jazz vocal a cappella, and I was taken with it. They did this arrangement of Waltzing Matilda that I loved as a kid. I remember just like loving this arrangement, and I think that had a lot to do with me kind of loving choral music, as I was introduced to like virtuosic a cappella vocal jazz at a very young age. I think we saw them perform when I was maybe like 10. I don't remember quite. But my dad also was into, the classic rock. So Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page and that stuff. And my mom was really, really into the Beatles. And I remember hating it as a kid because it was on the AM station and it was a 24 hours a day Beatles channel. But I just think even as a young kid, I just didn't like the AM radio quality. So I couldn't get past like the tinny quality.
Yeah.
So me and my brother would always, the Beatles channel again. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Like the Beatles are amazing. I'm having kind of a renaissance, I think maybe if we had a better sound system, or it was an FM station, maybe I would have been more open to it. I always tease her. And she also really listened to Simon and Garfunkel a lot. So I really grew up with that. Some Bob Dylan, who I'm still kind of, I like some of Bob. I can take him in small doses. I just sang in a really awesome Bob Dylan concert. I really love his lyrics. But yeah, I was kind of raised on Beatles, WC, and Swingle Singers.
Yeah, and so it sounds like it was maybe other than poor Beatles audio quality that you liked the music that you were listening to.
I did. Yeah.
Cool. I think sometimes it goes one way or another. Sometimes kids are really into what they're hearing, right? Their parents are playing stuff and they really like it. And sometimes you hear what your parents are playing and kind of rebel against that or want something completely different. Like, even when I was young, I don't think I thought things that my parents listened to were like uncool per se. But I remember relatively young kind of going like, oh, we're listening to that again, and wanting something completely different. So, and then of course, as I get older, all of those things that I kind of rolled my eyes at the time are things that I really like listening to now. So, that happens. When did you first start doing music where you were making music, either lessons or at school? What did that look like for the first time?
Sure. Yeah. So I took piano lessons. I was a probably subpar student. I didn't really practice. I mean, I was okay, but told me that I would kind of not practice what I was supposed to and start writing my own stuff and kind of going off. I think when I was like 8 or 10, and I don't know about you, but like I had this like Casio, this old, terrible sounding keyboard, but it had some like really weird MIDI sounds, like crickets at night or something. And I was really taken with these like kind of like weird, I don't know, like, oh gosh, neo wave or like new age kind of sounds. And so I really started playing around with like the keyboard. I discovered that it had styles that you could like adjust the accompaniment, and I found out, if you play a note in the lower octave, it has an accompaniment pattern in C, and if you play the white note with the black key to the left, it makes it go minor. And so I started like figuring out I could do chord progressions just by playing like the trigger for the C, A minor, F, G, and so I started actually writing songs with this old like Casio I started writing songs around the age of 10, and by the time I was 12, I had kind of begged my parents enough, I bothered them enough. I got a 4-track tape recorder,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to like mix it to speed. It was slow, so it was like very, very old school technology. But I learned actually double tracking. I kind of taught myself like, oh, I only have 4 tracks, but what if I like bounce the 4 tracks into the first track, and then I have I have 3 new ones, so I was kind of doing
Yeah.
like recording techniques. And my dad, and they helped me a lot. My dad had some, recording experience, so he helped me. And then I begged for a better keyboard. So at the time, a Yamaha synthesizer with a floppy disk drive was like this state of the art technology. And so I think I got that for my 12th or 13th birthday. So I recognize that I was very, very lucky to have parents that really, not only valued that, but I was able to get those tools, because I know it's not cheap, and I really, really am aware of how lucky and
Mm.
privileged I was. But yeah, so I would just lock myself in my room and just write, just dozens and dozens of songs after school, kind of through middle school, through high school, and then I realized kind of around junior, senior year of high school that it was really more than just like a hobby. It really was kind of my lifeblood, and
And the songs that you were writing, was this were you writing uh, classical kind of music, or were you writing for? Obviously, you say you're multi-tracking. Were you thinking about um, ensemble instrumental ensembles, or are you thinking about writing pop music?
it was mostly pop music, yeah, because I'm also a singer, and so I'd write songs and kind of, I kind of like, I guess, taught myself. And then when I got like, I was kind of like 10 years behind, like too early for like home recording equipment. Like, I really needed like an audio interface that didn't really exist for the public. Or it was like $5,000 or something. It was out of reach, and the computers that you could buy didn't they had like, what, 1 megabyte of RAM or something. They just couldn't handle audio, and so I had a really ancient Compaq Armada, like whatever, however old that
Yeah.
is. I think I had the first version of Cakewalk, like the oldest DAW. But when I was like 14 or 15, and so I started recording my own pop songs, like laying down tracks and stuff. They were what you would probably expect for a 14, but I also am obsessed with lyrics.
Yeah.
um, Me and my mom diverged a little bit. I was really into like Eminem and Dr. J and Snoop Dogg, and 50, she didn't really love that, but I really learned a lot about lyric writing from kind of the rap that I was
Mm-hmm.
listening to. And yeah, and then around 16, I think it was the Harry Potter soundtrack by John Williams that kind of sparked just a realization, oh, I can also write instrumentally. And so I kind of wrote like 10 or 12 like instrumental, like 1 minute pieces or so. I can kind of hear I was exploring orchestral instruments kind of one at a time, and I could hear myself kind of branching out a little bit. Yeah.
So, 14-year-old you said you were listening to hip hop and rap. What were the other musical influences? I mean, who, as a 14-year-old, who were you modeling your songs after? Anyone in particular? Were there people that were really inspiring, that like you thought 10 years from now, this is what I want my career to look like?
I don't even think I was really aware of like modeling. I really liked country too. So Rascal Flatts, Leanne Womack. Um, I was also, I was a early 2090s kid. So NSYNC, Backstreet Boys,
Yeah.
Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Spice Girls. I grew up, that was my kind of my jam in middle school and early high school. So, the power ballads by the Backstreet Boys, loved those, loved those just like heart wrenching, love ballad songs about breakups and stuff. So that, I think that really influenced me too. And just like that kind of like Max Martin style production, I just really liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you, besides doing all of this songwriting stuff, were you active in school? Did you continue lessons into high school? Were you doing any ensemble work? What did that look like as you start kind of approaching the end of high school and moving into college?
Sure. Yeah. Wow. I think this is the most like intense interview I've done, which is really cool. I haven't thought about some of this stuff. Um, yeah, I think I took a pause on piano lessons. I studied with my church organist, I think, for about 4 years. She really taught me like the foundation, of reading and repertoire. And I kind of around age 12, I think I was really focused. I was really motivated. I wrote songs probably every single day after school for hours. Look at my like journal when it was full, just hundreds of pages of songs and stuff. So I was definitely practicing. I don't know if it was like sanctioned piano lessons, but then I did join my high school choir, I think freshman year and senior year. And I really loved that. But I really found a very strong musical home in my church choir growing up. It was a youth mass, and so there were other people my age and just wonderful directors who were, just like a very kind of contemporary. I mean, not contemporary, like Christian. I don't know. I'm not explaining this very well, but like they really took in everyone who wanted to join and kind of found a place for them. But also really good harmonies. The one of the directors, he was a composer, and so he'd write a lot. And I wrote a little choral church song when I was like 16 or 17. They actually performed it, and very very encouraging of my composition. So that was also a really big thing, like to have someone say let's do it, and then get some positive feedback from it at such a young age was really powerful.
So when now you're leaving high school and you're going to go on to college, what was the thought? I mean, did you know you were majoring in music, or did you think you'd major in something else and just keep writing songs? Because it sounds like your passion was really songwriting more than anything. So what did that look like as you went on to school?
Well, I think that I wasn't really aware that I could do things beyond songwriting. Like again, like the technology that you have today, like where I have my iPad and I can just open GarageBand and instantly have all these samples and Logic. It comes with that. Wasn't I mean, I don't know how old you are, but like that wasn't really like a thing. My synthesizer came with a lot of sounds, but they weren't that great. So it's not really like the most inspiring sounds to hear. Like your tuba doesn't sound like a tuba. So it's hard to. But I think it was the Harry Potter John Williams soundtrack. I was also very, very in love with John Williams music. I'm sure a lot of people are. And I think it was, around senior year where I was actually going to major in psychology, and I think it was like the day before decisions were due, like in like March or something. I woke up and I was like, what am I doing? No, I need to be music. Like no, there's nothing else that I want to, I love psychology. I was a minor, but so this is actually kind of a funny story. I ended up going to Loyola Marymount for my undergrad. And again, I can't overstate how wonderful my parents are. Like I've been blessed with the most amazing parents. I didn't know this actually until like last year, but my mom actually ended up I thought she like FedExed my portfolio to Loyola Marymount to the chair, who was Dr. Mary Braden, who's actually become a dear friend of mine. But no, it came out that she actually hired a personal like carrier to deliver it to the music department that day.
Wow.
Like, so not only was it like not FedEx, but it was like personally delivered by someone. And I remember I stepped in the door like after school, and I got an email from Dr. Mary Braden saying, welcome, you're admitted to the music program. And it was like immediate. And I was so impressed with the kind of like attention, like personal attention. And I sent in my acceptance to LMU very shortly after that. So I think my mom, she had maybe the larger view that she knew how much I loved music. And I think she knew that this was not just like me kind of messing around. Like it was really important to me, and that I'd be very serious about it. So
yeah. Well, now I'm sure because even before talking to you tonight, I sensed that you were a very motivated person. And so I'm quite sure, even though I don't know this, but I'm quite sure that you continue to write music often that is not composing songs the way that we're talking about in the context of this podcast, broadly speaking, that you write a lot of music that isn't that. But where did some of the transition happen? Because, obviously we're talking today in your role as a choral music composer, and I know you do other things besides that, but where did that start to transition to be something that you did, right? Where that was like, I write music for choirs and other ensembles, as opposed to just writing a lot of music. I don't know if I'm asking that well, but does that make sense?
I understand. Yeah. And this was a more conscious, I think. So, at LMU, I also, practiced film scoring. I did several student films. I participated in the gamelan. I kind of tried on a lot of things. And I really learned as much as I could. And then after LMU, and also LMU has a fantastic choral program. I really, really I didn't realize that, LMU is one of the premier West Coast choral programs. And so I think just being around that, I kind of took it for granted, like, oh yeah, this is how it always is, but yeah, I think it was just kind of in the water, so to speak. And then I, like a lot of people, I decided to go straight into graduate program, and I got a job teaching early childhood music education, and I also worked at Apple for a summer. I think I spent my entire paycheck on their computer. It's not a good place for a young college graduate who wants technology to work. But I actually received some on the job training in Logic. So it was a really, really fun job. All my coworkers were like film people and photographers and music, and it was a really fun environment. But somewhere around maybe like a year after college, I found myself really, really missing the late night conversations about music theory, really missing those like deep talks about music with composition professors. And I just really missed class. Like, I know it sounds weird. I still miss class. Like I like being a student. I like being taught, and I like having that energy poured into me with things that are very, very interesting. And so I decided to apply to Cal State Long Beach. It's also where Matt Lanhazard went. And there, I kind of got, as I'm sure many graduate composition students do, dip their toe into aleatoric music and avant-garde stuff. And so I did some kind of different things, writing for Laptop Ensemble and Music Box. That was one of my recital pieces. And did some programming for Max MSP, like some more kind of, like programming side of like synthesizers and digital signal processing. Learned a lot about sound design. And then I think when I graduated Long Beach, sorry, this is a very long-winded answer, but it was sometime around then that I felt like I was still kind of searching for like my home. Like, there weren't a lot of women composers who I knew of. I think Amy Beach and like a few others, but I didn't really have like maybe a role model who I thought I could turn into. I don't know if that makes sense, but there weren't a lot of young. I don't know. I felt like the path wasn't that clear, and so I was kind of searching the film world. I've done films and I love it. However, I do have friends that do it full time, and the hours. I just think my mental health. I think I would really suffer from insomnia, and I don't think I could handle the high pressure of the 18-hour work days, and I really need to be on a good sleep schedule just for my mental health and stability. And I was the songwriting world. I did that for several years, but what I was finding is that I wanted to collaborate with people more, and you can co-write with people, but a lot of times it feels a little bit not competitive, but you're kind of competing for the same slots. Everyone wants to play Saturday night, Friday night at the same maybe few bars in Los Angeles that actually pay and that don't require you to bring in the first. I don't know if you know of the Los Angeles scene, but a lot of times you actually have to bring in a certain amount of people before you even get paid. And you might know
I lived in a house with guys who had a band when I was in undergrad and in Las Vegas. And I helped I did some songwriting. I fronted the band for one gig before quickly we all realized that was a horrible idea. Um, but yeah, I mean, we did the local band scene in Vegas in the early 2000s. And so I definitely know the like, yes, you can play here if you bring, X number of people to the show, and what a headache that is.
Yeah, and it's like you can do that the first few times maybe, but like after that, it's like it's really it's a very you spend a lot of time doing more like marketing and begging people, please, you'll have fun, I promise, please come, bring friends, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot about performing and kind of a mobile rig and stuff. But it was I think 2014, 2015. I actually haven't been in this world that long. My friend Ashley Stanberry and Mallory Gantner were in a choir called Nova Vocal Ensemble, and their director Jonathan Bautista was really a champion of new music, and I didn't really know about this, kind of how deep this world went at the time, and I sent a song to my friend Mallory, and she's like, "Oh, I'll perform this at our recital series." And so she performed a song I had written in grad school, and the director was like, "Oh, send me some more stuff." And so I sent him some stuff, and it kind of turned into my first commission, my first, and he asked me. I ended up becoming composer in residence for several years, and kind of. And the people I met in that choir, are just wonderful. I met Sonder Choi through there, Dale Trumbore. I think you've interviewed them as
Yep,
well. Right?
both of them have been guests. Yep.
I kind of like stumbled into just this really kind of like one of the arteries or veins. Sorry if my brother's listening, he's a cardiologist, I'm not using correct, but there's a pulse in Los Angeles. There's a magic with professional choral ensembles right now. I'm sure you've heard from a lot of LA-based composers too. There's just a lot of groups: LA Choral Lab, Choral Arts Initiative, Los Angeles Master Chorale, Pacific Chorale. There's all these groups that are just really active, and also they really champion living composers. And so that I kind of, and then I saw people like Dale and Sonder like having these amazing careers, and I was like, that's really inspiring. I love, and I think it finally clicked. These people are really nice. I feel like we're friends. I have a home. I feel like my quirky sense of humor and love of theory is like, is shared. And I love, it's so collaborative. It's not competitive. It seems like it's not a zero-sum game. I'm not competing with people. Like we can actually, it's singing together is, we're only as successful as the whole. And I really liked that.
Yeah.
But I also, going back to songwriting, I love lyric writing. I love text. So I feel, and I also love melody and I love theory. So I feel like, you don't get much more 4-part writing homework than writing a 4-part chorale, right? So I felt like for the first time I had found a synergy of all my like deepest interests in music, and it just kind of stuck.
Yeah. Well, you said the phrase zero-sum game, and that's a perfect segue. Because speaking of games, we're going to play a little game. This is, obviously we've been getting to know you, but this will be a kind of a quick way to get to know some different things about you. So we're going to play a game called This or That, and I'm just going to give you 2 things, and you're going to tell me which one you prefer, and that may be some hard choices, but which one you prefer. If you want to tell us a little bit about why, you can, but you don't have to. This will be this or that. Okay.
Hey.
Number 1, California in the summer or California in the winter?
California in the winter.
Okay, we're coming up on it. I like it.
And heat. I really don't like the summer. I lived in an apartment by the beach with no AC and no wind, like the windows didn't really open, and I love cold.
All right. Hot take, California in the winter. Number 2, beer or wine?
Probably beer.
Okay. If you're drinking beer, what style of beer are you into?
Citrus, like Shock Top or
Okay,
Blue Moon for sure.
got it. Number 3, late nights or early mornings?
Late nights.
Yeah, for sure. Number 4, eating out or cooking at home?
If you'd asked me this 10 years ago, eating out. Now, after having been cooking at home for the past 2 years,
Yeah,
pandemic, cooking at home, I really enjoy cooking with my husband and eating.
awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a go-to dish if like you were having people over and you wanted to wow them with your cooking skills? Do you have a go-to?
Yeah. So I have a go-to easy one that's homemade pizza on naan bread. And you just like put tomato sauce and like whatever you want and put it in the oven for like 15 minutes. And it comes out perfect. The naan loaf, it's like a perfect mini pizza. And it's
Nice.
really easy. And my probably my more, I don't know, advanced dish would be what's called a four bowl. There's this restaurant in Redondo Beach that serves four bowls, and it's basically just four things. And so I do like roasted potatoes, turkey, just a mix of fresh vegetables like steamed broccoli and fresh guacamole, and you just kind of mix it all together, and it's really good. It's not
Excellent.
super flashy, but it's really filling and really like colorful to look at. So
Yeah, excellent. All right. Number 5, vacation or staycation?
probably staycation because
Okay,
I'm so lazy. I don't want to travel anywhere.
I get it. A couple days off at home. That's always nice. Sure. Number 6, the ocean or the mountains?
The ocean.
Yeah.
I've lived by
So
the beach for 10 years now, and
now, do you, I mean, ocean beach in the summer? Is that acceptable use of summertime in California, or do you still, is it like a wintertime stroll on the beach?
I love winter. Winter at the beach is my favorite. The sunsets in the fall on the West Coast are insane. Well, usually it's because there's a fire and it makes the sky orange, but yeah. But the sunsets in Redondo Beach, where I lived for 10 years. Now we live in, like a few miles inland, but we're still 10-minute drive to the beach, which is amazing. I love it that dusk, like when it's kind of cool. It's just yeah, that's where my heart lives. So
Yeah. Number 7, MP3s or physical recordings for listening?
like vinyls.
Yeah.
Um, if I want an experience, probably vinyls. But if it's just for convenience, MP3s, just for their storage, is much easier.
Yeah, I understand that. Number 8, vintage or modern?
Probably vintage for certain things.
Yeah, that's kind of a vague question, I guess, but I don't know. That was a broad, a
Yeah,
sweeping vintage or sweeping modern.
for architectural styles, vintage, 100%.
Yeah, cool. Uh, Number 9, hip hop or rock?
Probably hip hop.
Okay, you told us some of your younger year hip hop likes. Is there anybody you're listening to now that you're really excited about?
Um, I feel like my ability to like find new artists has kind of, I don't really know, like I use Spotify somewhat, but like I can't listen to the radio anymore because it's always ads. So I guess I don't really like, I don't know. Like I mean I do like Kendrick Lamar and and some other new artists, but I don't know. I'm finding it harder to find like new like artists.
It's so interesting. I was just listening to a podcast, actually Eric Barnum's podcast, Choral Contrarians, and they were talking about not really pop music specifically, but they were talking about collective memory decay and culturally who we remember and who we will not remember. And I mean, really in broad, since the beginning of the collective human memory, who are people that would stick around. But he was talking about modern artists. And also, I think about how available music is now, and how that's interesting that it makes it somehow harder to find music now, because there's so much of it that it's maybe more difficult to be discerning with what we're listening to. So that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many Spotify, playlists and artists. It's hard to kind of, or if you're driving, like the name of the artist might not come up. I might really like the song, but like I don't have a chance to like really write it down or take note of it.
All right. And number 10, a good book or a good show?
Probably a good show.
What was the last good show you watched?
I just finished up Made, which is it's very powerful, but it's very heavy. But yeah, it was an excellent show.
Haven't seen it, but it's on my list.
Yeah, it's really good.
All right, perfect. That was This or That with Amy Gordon. Thank you for the game.
It was fun.
All right. Hey, I want to talk about some of your music, some of your choral music. It's, we've been talking for 45 minutes. It's time. Let me ask you about When We're Gone 10,000 Years. Can you tell me a little bit about the genesis and creation of that piece?
Sure. So I don't know how much I've read the program note on my website. I'm assuming that's where you found that. So the text is by Jonathan Talberg, who is the choir director at Bob Cole Conservatory, where I got my master's. And again, I was aware that they had a wonderful choir, but I just really lucked out both my undergrad and my grad. Man, did I find schools with just premier world-class choral programs. So I unfortunately was a comp master student, so I didn't really interact with the choir that much, but I always wanted to like work with Jonathan Talberg. He really gets mad at me when I call him Dr. Talberg. Even, I don't know if you have this thing when you graduate, even though you're like not a student anymore, I still want to call everyone that I had when I was a student doctor. But anyway, we were at a choral conference, a really fun one in Los Angeles, or in the West Coast, called Echo. It's in Oakhurst, and it's like basically a 3-4 night summer camp. Like you eat all the meals, and you eat all the meals there. You bunk there. It's really fun. It's in kind of like, like the woods, and you just really eat, with everyone. And we were having lunch, I think, together. We had ended up at the same table, and I was talking about looking for new texts, and he just happened to mention, "Oh, I write." And I was like, "Really? Like, will you send me some poetry?" And he did, and he sent me a set of texts called Ocean Poems, and I was looking for some text at this time for a particular concert for C3LA, a contemporary choral collective of Los Angeles that does living composers, and it's a kind of a collective made up of its own members who are all composers, conductors, and singers as well. And I fell in love with When We Were Gone 10,000 Years, and another one called I'm Still Here, which actually was about his father passing. And so I asked him, if I could set them, and we met for lunch a few times and just had some really lovely conversations. This piece was actually written for the C3LA concert. It ended up being a collaboration with a chef. So the audience was supposed to eat a specifically designed little bite or amuse-bouche that was supposed to go with the piece. And so the chef that I was paired with, he ended up designing a dish called takoyaki, which is like a Japanese dough ball. And kind of it's supposed to have like fish flakes or something. And when he like fires it, again, I'm not really a chef, but and when you apply heat to it, the little fish flakes like dance. So even though it's like dead material, sorry if this is gross, they still have life. And so he kind of liked that in the text, that when we're gone, or in the I'm Still Here poem, it's like, I'm still here even though I've passed, like you can still see me in the sky and the horizon, so that there's still like life after death. And so that kind of inspired some of the collaboration. Yeah, it was really fun. So I'm not sure if that's how that piece was supposed to taste, like takoyaki, but
Yeah.
but yeah,
Cool.
so
There's you do a lot of in that piece, kind of passing back and forth between voice parts, and a lot of repetition of text as you do that. And that's not the only piece that you do that in. I'm wondering if that, how you came to that as a device that you like to use, because I did notice that that happens in several of your pieces. Is that was there something specific about that? Does that reflect any of your influences as a composer, specific musicians that maybe had similar things going on?
yeah. Oh, you're asking some really hard questions. I love it. I think I'm really taken with minimalism and like Steve Reich, John Adams. Like I really like repetition of material. But I also, as an alto, like I really like getting some attention every now and then. And so I do try to. I also was challenging myself when Jonathan Talberg and I went out to lunch. I asked him like what he maybe wanted more of. And I think the block of harmony where just 8 voices doing blocks for 5 minutes, everybody homophonic. I feel like that style for me, I've explored that a lot, and I'm kind of looking for other textures. And so I've been really challenging myself to write contrapuntally more, like counterpoint, and not just doing like kind of just block chord composing, or alternating between kind of more homophonic block dense chords and then contrapuntal. And so I think I was experimenting with a lot more counterpoint in this suite, just off of Jonathan Talberg's taste, to kind of honor that, but also challenge myself a little bit to not just do kind of block.
Yeah, I like, and in fact, you do a little bit of that in this piece, because when you get to kind of the second half and the tumbled together section, there's the tenor solo, and it does become a little bit more kind of together, right? A little bit more homophonic, and it's really interesting. You kind of mimic. There's some sliding of vocal lines in the beginning. I think it's mostly the soprano voice part doing it at the beginning of the piece, and then it kind of gets mimicked at the end, but it's much more drawn out. So if you're looking at the score, you don't even remember that it's that it's like the beginning, if that makes sense. It kind of echoes the beginning without feeling the same as the beginning, in a really nice way, so that you're not going, oh wow, this is a lot of the same material. It feels fresh and new, even though you are recalling some of that stuff from the beginning. So I don't know if that was, if I have a question or not about that. Just to say, I thought that was really effective, the way that you translated this more disjunct movement at the beginning to the feeling at the end, where it is more homophonic.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that is a very kind of a conscious / subconscious. I really like ternary form. I feel like I use that overall form a lot, kind of A something and then something contrasting and then coming back to A, but ABA prime, really changing up how it comes back. And that's usually my favorite part of the piece. I really don't like writing the first minute because it's all new and like I don't know the material yet. Sometimes I don't know like what the piece wants until about like the third minute. And I love that because then if it's like a 4-minute commission or something, I've done most of it and now it's like my time to play. I've introduced all the characters and now how can I recall or maybe intertwine them in new ways so it's not just repetitive or brand new? How can I kind of take and develop that material and bring it
Yeah.
to conclusion?
Well, I really, it's a great piece and I like all of the piece, but I really like, I was listening to it and looking at the score and going through the first half and going, oh yeah, this is interesting. I like this. This is nice. And then it moves to that tenor solo section and I went, oh yeah, I like this. This is real nice. I like that. But it's the very, very ending, like the last, I don't know, 6 or 8 bars. It kind of transitions a little bit. And I think there's maybe like, I don't remember exactly what the text is or exactly what happens, but I just know the last 4 bars of that piece in particular, I really like. It feels like really comforting at the end. And so the piece does build. And so I don't know if it's because of what you just said, because the beginning is sort of you experimenting a little bit as you're writing a piece, and then you kind of find what the piece wants at the end. But if that's it, I would say that you've described what that piece did for me as a listener, right? Is that I'm kind of at the beginning trying to figure out where this is going, and it brings me in towards the end. So I really like the way the piece ended. I mean, I liked all of it, but I like the way it ended as well.
Yeah, I think, when we're gone, and it's kind of like a question, right? Like, so you're not really sure, like, will our lives matter? Like, so it's kind of like also like waves. There's a lot of kind of like washing textures but yeah, thank you. I had a lot of fun writing the ending.
I think part of it is there's a descending, the baritone and bass are, I think, singing a fifth at the end, and it starts on maybe just a quarter note and then moves down. They move as a fifth down, and it settles the chord, because I think the basses are on maybe the third of the chord at the start of the bar, and then they move down.
If I look up, I'm like, what did I write?
I think so. And then they move to the root maybe. And so it just has this very settled feeling as the basses move, which was really cool. So yeah, it's a great ending to a great piece.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think I went to like an A minor chord. Yeah, I did the yes, it was on the 5th. So I went from an A minor to an F major. Yeah, I don't know. I just really am a sucker for like those mediant movements. I don't know why the minor 3. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I dug it.
Oh, thank you.
I want to talk about another piece, and I wrote in my little notes here that I think it's the next piece I'm going to ask you about is one of the most effective pieces of yours for me. And so we'll see what reaction that gets from you when I tell you what it is. But I want you to tell me about In Times of Hibernation.
Oh, okay. This is kind of scary. It's like, which one of my children are you going to bring up?
Yeah.
And, In Times of Hibernation, that's probably one of my most recent works. So this was a commission with Juan Carlos Acosta of Sacra Profana, a wonderful choir in San Diego. They've actually ended up doing quite a bit of mine. They were supposed to do a song cycle of mine in May 2020, but you know how that goes. Yeah, I have a wonderful working relationship with Juan. And I had actually been to a Zoom. It was like San Diego Arts Council or something, and he opened it. It was like choral directors and composers. I think Sarah Rimkus was on the. Have you done an interview with her too? She's a really great composer.
Yeah.
She's worked with him a lot. And we were both on the call, kind of as like composers, and just talking about like the pandemic and like what do we do? And it was actually because of a weird combination of the CARES Act and AB5. Do you know AB5 in Los Angeles, in California? So basically, you can't hire independent contractors, like they have to be employees. And so Sacrofona had switched, or it was like something like, they had to spend this money for their employees or something by like the next week or something, because they had this money from the government for arts rescue funding or whatever it is. I'm not sorry, Juan, if I'm butchering the story, but anyway, he called me and he's like, so we have a project, we have funding for 3 songs, and we need to do it within like a week. Do you want to write something? Sure. So, but that's always like, okay, well, I need to provide text like ASAP. Because there's no time to like clear rights for it or anything. So I had actually begun writing this kind of over the pandemic. I'm sure a lot of composers kind of have their project that has come out of this, or or maybe it's a period of kind of not writing because it's just a really tough time. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. But I came up with this, what I'm now calling a 5-movement song cycle called Songs of Hope in Strange Times. Just like this really alien territory in my life, and that I had never really experienced, kind of like where it was really stressful, but also really boring and like just really slow, like nothing was changing. And so I was really down one night. I think it was 3 a.m. I was in like the back room. The moon was streaming down, and I had this journal. Just ended up like writing 3 movements of my own text because there wasn't really any poets I felt like reaching out to. It's just that my pilot light was low, but I had this little glimmer of like, I want to write this right now and I have to. And so the first movement is in times of descent, or things in March, just going to the grocery store and everyone's panicked, and then the quiet settles in times of hibernation, like when people started really hunkering down and like nobody was really going out. And then I'm actually writing the 3rd movement right now for Kellyanne Self to premiere in spring 2022, called In Times of Stasis, where it's just like nothing's changing. And so this, I'm just doing like a very like minimal texture, just kind of kaleidoscopic like lines that kind of wash in and wash out. And then the 4th one will be In Times of Reemergence, and the 5th one will be In Times of Rising. So In Times of Hibernation is the kind of the calm. It's like going into the calm before the storm, like the deepest quiet. And it's just about that sense of like not knowing kind of what time of day it is. Nothing is really changing. It's all the same, and just kind of waiting for something, but you're not sure.
The ticking of the clock. The ticking of the clock. The ticking of Silent.
You immediately feel that sense of kind of monotony and sameness, without the piece being that, right? The music is not monotonous or sameness, but it represents that well. And there's something I love about the warmth of the cello with voice that is just really great. So I thought that was a really smart choice for the topic that you were writing for.
Thank you. And there's something about the D string, the open strings on the cello. So I purposely started on the D string so that I could kind of then descend to the G string, the second lowest open string. And then when it goes into that kind of like, was it like Phrygian dominant or something? It's like a weird mode. This piece is also very modally. There's a lot of major, minor, and they're kind of crossing again, kind of representing that, is it day, is it night? You know, my brother is also a doctor, and so he was working, you know, I don't know if he worked in the COVID wards, but, you know, he would just describe like, you know, they're working all hours of the day and just this weird, and that's the line, half the world in slumber, half know neither night nor day. That's kind of like the nurses and the doctors and the first responders working around the clock, never seeing the sun, while the other half of us are like sleeping, you know, never going outside. Like, but yeah, that open D string and then sliding it to the G string and then the C string, it has this like really like dull quality. I don't know. The different open strings, I really wanted to play around with those as marcations of kind of the mood sinking further and further down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think the use of a descending fifth is really interesting. And you as a kind of self-proclaimed theory nerd, I don't know if you've read this book, but are you familiar with The Harmonic Experience?
No.
By W.A. Matthew?
But I should. That sounds amazing.
It is very, very legitimately a life-changing book. And we've talked about it a little bit on the podcast because my guest, David Montoya, Dave studies actively with the author of that book, Alaudine Matthew. And
does it talk about like tuning?
Yes, quite a bit about tuning.
I've talked several times at the Echo conference with David Montoya about that, and I need to get that book.
The book, I mean, very, very legitimately life-changing for me as a choral musician. But the implications harmonically and the way we think about things with descending fifths is talked about in that. And I think you'll find it very interesting related to what you've just said about this piece, even having not read it previously. There's a lot that will sync up. So a big recommendation on that.
Will you email that to me?
I will. Well, I really love that piece. It is not without challenge, but just is a well-written and great kind of captures the mood of the text really, really well. So I like it a lot. Now, this is a piece, the next one I want to ask you about is very different from the first two. But I found it to be just a really, really charming, sweet piece. And it is called Light Up.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm so glad you're bringing this up. So this is actually, so I've been looking a big part. You're a choral composer as well, right?
No one should ever call me that. I occasionally arrange things mostly out of necessity, although I do have a couple of arrangements that are technically published and available for purchase. But no, I am not a composer.
That's a whole other discussion, but I feel like if you are doing it, you are a composer, you know. But anyway, so one of the biggest things is text, right? I'm sure I have a lot of your guests. Have you talked about text?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because I mean, that's one of the biggest things when I teach vocal arranging, that's the biggest difference is that what are you singing? You can't just put notes. Your singers have to sing something, right? So, and with that comes quite a lot of responsibility in choosing a text that will not only speak to you or have meaning, but also set well. There's kind of a delicate balance between something being too florid and too many words where it's just so much you can't find a good length of phrase, or it's too much to cram into the texture, or maybe it's too short, there's not enough words. So I'm always looking for kind of also Adele, I think, calls them zombie poets, like Sarah Teasdale and Emily Dickinson, where they just keep getting set. I mean, there's like, you look in J.W. Pepper and you look up like an Edgar Allan Poe, like A Dream Within a Dream. I did that with a comp student one time. Let's look up how many settings of this. And there's like hundreds, because it's public domain. You can do it for free. It's quality. But the problem with that is you're going to be one of hundreds of settings. And some of them that I've heard, I'm like, I can't do better than this. Like this is really good. I don't even want to try. So I started looking for family members, and my maternal grandmother, Rhoda Jordan, my dad gave me a book of her poems typed on a typewriter, dated like 1970 or something. And I went through them and cataloged the ones I really liked for music. And so this was one of Light Up and I Celebrate Life. We're part of something called the Light Cycle. And they were written for a middle school choir to be premiered actually as a holiday concert. So it's not Christmas, it's not religious, but it kind of works, for the holiday season. Yeah, and I just had a lot of fun setting my grandmother's text for this one. I really love the text. Jennifer Gatterland and I, this was my second or third commission with her. I think it's my second commission with her, and she also participated in a consortium. She's a wonderful director in Mountain View, kind of NorCal, California. And so I kind of knew, I knew her group could do this, but she really, we talked about, well, what do you want? And that's something I also really try to do, is ask the directors, what do you need? What do your students need? What do your singers, maybe what do you have too much of? What are you tired of? What do you want? And the thing I'm getting a lot of is counterpoint, like a lot of just a return to polyphony, and not a return, but I feel like she said it's actually easier for this age group to sing imitative polyphony than it is to sing harmony, because they can follow melody. And so giving everyone a melody, and maybe so like in the middle section everyone kind of sings the melody together, and then the altos sing the melody but offset by 2 beats. So they've already sung it, and they get the we sound like we're doing many different things, but it's material that I know. It has a high payoff for not a lot of work. But you have to be very careful in how you construct it so I actually find this harder sometimes to rate than 8-part, because I have to cut out everything that isn't necessary.
Yeah. Well, and I think I would assume that some of that comes from your background writing songs. And I think it gets lost sometimes on composers that the best thing is just a good, simple melody with good, simple words. And sometimes music gets lost trying to do so many other things that it forgets about a good, simple melody with good, simple words.
Yeah.
And that was, as I was listening, I try with everybody who I have on the podcast, I try to listen to as many pieces as I possibly can find on their website and look at scores and, really try and absorb some of this music. And so when a piece kind of jumps out of that, right, and sticks out, I know there's something there. And as I was listening to everything on your website, this is actually towards the kind of bottom of the second column of your pieces, right? So I've already been through lots of music, and it stuck out, and so that says something to me. So it's a lovely, charming piece, and it would be a great piece for middle school directors or those folks with good elementary school choirs. This was not the only time that you set poetry by a family member. Is that correct? You've set by another family member as well.
Yeah. Wow. You really did. I feel like, wow, you really looked at all my stuff. This is awesome. Yeah, so Rhoda Gordon, her daughter, Susan Jordan, was my aunt. And she passed several years ago. And at her celebration of life, she had a book of poetry called As Time Stops to Rest. And they, as part of the celebration of life, she wasn't particularly religious, but I mean, I think agnostic. I don't know. So they didn't want to do like a kind of a service, but rather kind of a celebration of life. They read this piece called Magic, this poem called Magic, and I remember, I think it was like right around the time I think that I had just gotten my first commission with Nova Vocal Ensemble. I want to say like 2013, 2014. Like it was right when I was kind of realizing that the choral world was like really where I wanted to plant my roots, kind of grow roots, whatever. And there was this one line in it that just brought me to my knees musically, so to speak. And it was, but oh, for a moment, I grow flowers with my hands. And I just like that I was like, I have to set this. And I remember in my words, I said at the celebration of life, when I went up to just, give my memories of her, I said, I'm going to set this piece. And I did. Several years later, it took me actually 3 years to write this song cycle. It's for full choir and piano. And I went through and I found 3 pieces of hers. The first is two friends sitting by the ocean, getting lost in time. The second movement is called Storm's End, kind of like, a violent storm, and, and then it leads to the sun finding peace. And then the third movement is Magic. And for someone who wasn't religious, it's very spiritual, as I enter the kingdom of all and am. And she capitalized am. So she was raised Jewish, but not really practicing. So I don't know if that was like a reference to, like religious terminology, but it was very spiritual. So I had that climax in my head. I wrote the first movement, I think the summer of 2016. The second movement finally when, my summer break, the movement of the summer of 2017. And then finally Magic. I remember writing it, getting up to that climax. And I think I even was crying. Like I had been waiting to write this climax for 3 years. So it was a very powerful movement. I really felt her presence, I think, when I was writing it. And that's one of my favorite moments in all my pieces. Like, I don't know what it is. It was a very powerful.
Well, I just think what a gift for you to have been able to find poetry by people who mean something to you, and for you to be connected to it in a way that allowed you to set it to music. And then what a gift you give to the people performing that music, that they're now being introduced to a poet that they don't know, right? We were just talking about the sometime monotony of poets that are used by choral composers. And they're used often because it's good poetry. But how many times can you sing the same setting of text? And to what you said about finding a setting of it that you think, oh, I can't do any better. It's so funny. Josh Shank, who was a previous guest on our show, just posted on Facebook the other day. He said, I really think that I want to set, I think, Shenandoah. He said, I love that. I would love to set that, but I just don't think you can do any better than James Erb's setting of it. What should I do? Right? Because he was feeling that conflict of, there is this, quintessential setting. Why would I do anything else, even though I'm moved by the poetry? And so I so appreciate and just think it's so charming that you were able to set the poetry of family members and then to share that with other people, because I don't know if those poems would otherwise be heard or read or seen by people other than your family, and maybe they would have, but what a great gift that you've given to your family members, and what a great gift they gave to you in the form of that poetry.
And yeah, I think, I do pride myself. I don't think I have set a public domain poem in almost 5 years. I've either started writing my own. I've done 2 commissions now. Well, I finished one. I don't know if you saw Lotus Flower. Another piece I really was really proud of for essay. That was actually written by a high schooler of the high school where it was premiered, and she actually read it at the premiere, and it was very powerful. I'm actually doing another commission with Redondo Beach High School, and I just selected a text. The choir director did a call for poems from the students, and this amazing text, it brought me to tears. Like it brought me to tears. Like, I cannot wait to set it. Like, even thinking about it, like, and no one has this poem. Like I never would have found this if I hadn't kind of, okay, well, what's in the community? What can we use? So I really encourage maybe choral composers who are banging their head against a wall. Where do I find text? Reach out to your community or your family, but only set it if it speaks to you. I will not set things if they don't speak to me. So I kind of like, Dale, I know, does this, she has like a little secret file or like a file on her computer that has poems that she wants to set at some point. So she always has like a constant catalog of stuff that she can maybe pull up. And also, I will not set things unless I get the right to set it. So I do have a contract that everyone signs, giving me permission to set it musically. So it also is important that I get that. I did make my dad sign permission for my grandmother's text. And actually, 3 more of her poems, Rhoda Jordan's poems, are going to be premiered by the Long Beach Youth Chorus in December. And one of them is actually about my dad. It's called Boy and Guitar. And it's about him. His mom wrote that about him playing guitar. And so it's really special. Yeah.
Yeah. Super cool. Well, a lot of great music, and people can go to your website and can hear recordings of, I think, almost everything on the website. There's a couple that don't have recordings, but we'll include the link to your website in the kind of notes for this. I want to ask you just a couple of things, non-musical things, before we wrap up. What was the last? When was the last time you had a break? And by a break, I mean like a day where you didn't work on stuff.
I honestly can't answer the question. It's been a very, well, we also moved in one of my like lesser busy times, and so I was packing and unpacking, and I got married last year, so a lot of my time has just been like on logistical life tasks. But I do have a week off next week. But by week off, I mean me and my husband will be hosting Thanksgiving for the first time, and I'm finishing up a commission or 2. And so it's not really a week off, it's just a chance to do other things. But I'm going to give myself a good day.
Yeah. Okay, so now when you say you're hosting Thanksgiving, by the way, Thanksgiving is my absolute most favorite holiday, and it does not have to be one that I share with lots of people. In fact, I'm so excited. I think this will be the second year in a row where it's just my wife and my son and me. I'm so excited. I love Thanksgiving. When you say that you're hosting, does that mean that you are doing a lot of the cooking for Thanksgiving?
Well, we have about 10 people coming, and we're doing like the turkey and mashed potatoes and veggies, but people are bringing dishes. But yes, I'm a little nervous.
Now, have you cooked a turkey before? Have you done the
I asked
full
my
turkey?
husband, I said, look, if you can just handle the turkey, because I'm scared of it, I don't want to deal with it. I'll do everything else. But he's an amazing cook, and so we're kind of doing it together. And my mom also has offered to help, and people have been very generous in bringing side dishes and stuff. So I don't feel like I'll be alone, but a little nervous.
Thanksgiving, what is your favorite Thanksgiving food?
This is gonna sound strange, but the cranberry sauce.
No, I get it. Now, are you making cranberry sauce?
So actually, my Dr. Mary Braden is gonna join me, my choir director from LMU. So she's making homemade cranberry sauce, which I'm very excited about.
Lovely. If you were to take time off, I mean, like actual really time off, and you were not going to work, and you were going to take a real vacation, what would the dream vacation be?
So this is not really a good answer because it's kind of work, but I am dreaming of a month-long artist residency. Like just somewhere like in nature. And I just don't want to touch my phone for like a month, and I just want to compose. Like I'm feeling like I really almost like a couples retreat, but with my music. Like I just want to, I just want just to like even a week. I think of just nothing I have to think about except music and like just thinking, eating and sleeping. So I think that's gonna be a goal. But on vacation, I love anywhere by the ocean. I'm kind of feeling Hawaii, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Have you been to Hawaii?
I have as a kid.
Yeah.
I know this sounds like boohoo, but like we live so close to the beach. It's like I don't want to like spend money to go to the beach. And it's like, well, we live here. I know it's like a sob story, but
yeah. Well, Amy, one of the things that I have grown to really admire about you in our mostly online interactions. In fact, I think the first time we met, we've actually already covered on this podcast, not you and I, but I met you, I think the same time that I met Matt Hazard, and sat at a table with my previous guest, Chris Harris, which was at a bar in Kansas City at an ACDA conference. I distinctly remember I got a business card from you and Marcus Carline, and I think Matt Hazard, all in the same night at that bar.
Yes, or was it Course America in Philadelphia?
It was ACDA in Kansas City for sure. But other than that, we've emailed several times back and forth and talked. I think maybe via Facebook or something like that. One of the things that I've grown to admire a great deal about you, in addition to you having a clear passion for what you do and working really hard, you've got a really nice entrepreneurial spirit, and you're a hustler. You are a really good advocate for your own work, which I think is sometimes really, really challenging, because the world of choral music is not always one where you feel immediately rewarded or immediately recognized. And even if you're doing really good work, it is sometimes difficult to feel like you're being seen by all the people that you want to be seen by. And you mentioned in our conversation tonight that you came maybe a little bit more recently to the world of choral music, even though you'd been in the musical world for a long time. So I just appreciate that about you, and I think that's really, really great. And I know that others who hear the podcast tonight will appreciate that about you as well. And hopefully we'll get to your website and buy some of your music and get on board with one of the commissioning consortiums, or commission you to write a brand new piece, and they'll be happy they did.
Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Do you have a little bit of your drink left, or a lot of your drink left?
We're at the same exact point.
Yeah, perfect. Well, we'll say with that, cheers, and we'll talk again soon.
Cheers.
All right, cheers. Thank you so much for joining us for the conversation. Thank you to everyone who has listened to any of our episodes this year. When I started the show earlier this year, I wasn't sure what it would turn into. I'm so pleased to be able to share these conversations with you, and I hope that you feel like you've genuinely gotten to know our guests. They are all excellent composers and even more amazing people. We'll be back next year with a brand new slate of episodes. Until then, a couple of favors. First, subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, we'd love to have you give us that 5-star rating if you're listening on Apple Music or Spotify. Second, we'd love to have you join us on social media. Give us a follow on Instagram at Whatever and Ever Amen. There you will find exclusive photos and media to accompany the show, plus a glimpse into all the other things that we do as Whatever and Ever Amen. Finally, if you're enjoying the show and you want to help support future projects by Whatever and Ever Amen, head over to buymeacoffee.com/whateverchoir and buy us a beer. That's right, you can send us beer money online that we promise isn't actually going towards beer. Thank you so much for your support. We'll be announcing guests for the upcoming season, and we look forward to sharing a conversation with you soon. Until then, enjoy another drink. Cheers.